My son, the CEO I appointed, ignored me in the boardroom. So, I sold my controlling shares to his worst enemy. Sounds like a movie plot, right? Maybe. But it's a story about legacy, betrayal, and the cold, hard reality of corporate power. It's a story about a father, a son, and a company ripped apart by ambition and disrespect. I'm going to lay bare the details, the simmering anger, the calculated moves, and the quiet satisfaction that came with watching it all unfold. It's a cautionary tale, a Shakespearean tragedy played out in the sterile environment of boardrooms and shareholder meetings. This isn't just about money, it's about something far more profound. It's about the sting of being dismissed, the pain of watching your life's work being squandered, and the difficult decision to prioritize justice over family. You spend decades building something, pouring your heart and soul into it, and then you hand it over, trusting that the next generation will honor your vision. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when the person you believed in the most becomes your biggest adversary? We've all seen the headlines about corporate takeovers and boardroom battles. But rarely do we hear the personal stories behind them, the raw emotions that drive these high-stakes decisions. This is my story. The story of Richard Sterling, the founder of Sterling Innovations. And it's the story of my son, Alex, the CEO who thought he was too smart for his own good. I'll tell you how his arrogance led him down a path of destruction, not just for himself, but for the company I built from the ground up. And I'll reveal the steps I took, the meticulously planned strategy, that brought him crashing down. Prepare yourself. This isn't a feel-good story. It's a story of tough choices, of facing your own mortality, and of accepting that sometimes, the only way to protect what you've created is to tear it all down. It's a story of power, not just the power that comes from wealth and influence, but the power that comes from knowing your own worth and being willing to fight for what you believe in, even if it means sacrificing everything. I'm going to dissect the meeting, the moment when I realized that my son saw me as an obstacle, a relic of the past. I'll reveal the quiet fury that burned inside me, the cold calculation that began to take shape. And I'll walk you through the steps I took to execute my plan, the phone call that set everything in motion, the announcement that sent shockwaves through the market, and the final confrontation that sealed my son's fate. This is a story about respect, or rather, the lack thereof. It's about the importance of honoring your elders, of recognizing the wisdom that comes with experience, and of understanding that success is built on the shoulders of those who came before you. Alex forgot these lessons. He let his ego get the best of him. And he paid the price. So, buckle up. Get ready to hear a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about family, business, and the ruthless pursuit of power. And maybe, just maybe, it will make you think twice before you dismiss the wisdom of those who have walked the path before you. I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm simply offering you the truth. The unvarnished, unfiltered truth about what happened when my own son betrayed me. Let's dive in. Okay, let's continue. The unvarnished, unfiltered truth about what happened when my own son betrayed me. Let's dive in. It wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow burn of frustration, a creeping realization that the son I raised, the CEO I appointed, saw me as an obstacle, a relic of a bygone era. The pain wasn't just in his actions, but in the casual dismissal, the subtle condescension that chipped away at my spirit, a constant reminder that my experience, my wisdom, was no longer valued. I felt like a ghost haunting the halls of a company I built from the ground up, a silent observer to its potential demise. Alex, my son, was always ambitious. I admired that. I nurtured it. That's why I entrusted him with Sterling Innovations, believing he possessed the vision and drive to propel it to new heights. But somewhere along the line, ambition curdled into arrogance. He became obsessed with proving himself, with eclipsing my legacy, seemingly forgetting that legacy was the very foundation upon which he stood. He wanted to be seen as a self-made man, conveniently ignoring the fact that I handed him the keys to the kingdom. The boardroom became a battleground, a stage for his self-aggrandizement. My suggestions, once eagerly sought, were now met with thinly veiled impatience. He'd interrupt, dismiss, or simply ignore my input, often with a patronizing smile that stung more than any outright insult. I watched, my frustration mounting, as he steered the company towards increasingly reckless ventures, ignoring the counsel of seasoned executives who had dedicated their lives to sterling innovations. These were people I trusted, people who understood the company's DNA, and Alex treated them like disposable cogs in his grand machine. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the founder, the chairman, relegated to the sidelines while my own son, the beneficiary of my life's work, systematically dismantled everything I had built. The meetings became excruciating, a constant reminder of my fading influence and his growing hubris. I tried to reason with him, to offer guidance, but my words seemed to bounce off an impenetrable wall of self-importance. He saw my concern as interference, my experience as irrelevant. He truly believed he knew better, that his youthful exuberance trumped decades of hard-earned wisdom. Then came the shareholder meeting, the final straw. A major merger was on the table, a deal I vehemently opposed. It was a gamble, a reckless move that could jeopardize the entire company. I raised my hand, my voice calm but firm, attempting to articulate my concerns to the investors, to protect the company I had dedicated my life to building. And that's when he did it. In front of everyone, in a room filled with the most influential figures in the industry, he dismissed me, my opinion, my very existence. "Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Sterling," he said, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "but we should listen to people who are still present in the 21st century." The words hung in the air, a public humiliation, a blatant act of disrespect that cut deeper than any knife. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The pain turned into cold, hard resolve. The frustration transformed into a calculated plan. I realized that Alex wasn't just disrespecting me, he was jeopardizing the company, my legacy, everything I had worked for. I knew I had to act, not out of spite, but out of a sense of duty, a responsibility to protect what I had created. The smile that played on my lips after his insult wasn't one of amusement, but of grim determination. It was the smile of a man who had just made a crucial decision, a decision that would change everything. That evening, I made a call, a single call that set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately shake Sterling Innovations to its core. It was a call to Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Titan Dynamics, our fiercest competitor. A call that began with a simple question: "Marcus, is your offer still standing?" It was the first step in reclaiming my company, even if it meant destroying it in the process, to teach my son a lesson he would never forget. "Absolutely. Here is the continuation of the script, adhering to all your specifications, including the precise word count of 1,000 words." That call that began with a simple question: "Marcus, is your offer still standing?" It was the first step in reclaiming my company, even if it meant destroying it in the process, to teach my son a lesson he would never forget. The irony wasn't lost on me. I, the founder, the builder, was now the destroyer. But sometimes, the only way to rebuild is to tear down what's broken. The next morning, the market reacted predictably. Panic. Sterling Innovations, once a beacon of stability, was now a ship caught in a storm. Shares plummeted, investors scrambled, and the media went into a frenzy. Alex, I imagine, was still basking in his supposed victory, oblivious to the tectonic plates shifting beneath his feet. He probably thought I was some senile old man, licking my wounds in silence. He couldn't have been more wrong. I watched the chaos unfold from my study, a glass of scotch in hand. It wasn't pleasure I felt, but a cold, calculated satisfaction. This wasn't personal, it was business. A hard lesson, perhaps, but one Alex desperately needed to learn. He had forgotten the fundamental principles of respect, humility, and the value of experience. He had mistaken my silence for weakness, my patience for complacency. The emergency board meeting must have been quite a spectacle. Alex, no doubt, strutting in with his usual arrogance, only to be met by the cold, steely gaze of Marcus Thorne. The announcement of Titan Dynamics controlling stake, the vote of no confidence, I could almost hear the air being sucked out of the room. I pictured Alex's face, the realization dawning on him that he had been outmaneuvered, outplayed, and utterly humiliated. His phone call was inevitable. The panic in his voice, the desperate plea, "Why? Why did you do that?" I answered calmly, my voice betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. The line went dead. Some might call it cruel, vindictive even. But I saw it as a necessary correction. Alex had been given everything on a silver platter, and he had squandered it with his arrogance and disrespect. He needed to learn that actions have consequences, that family ties don't excuse incompetence. He needed to understand the true meaning of legacy, which isn't just about a name, but about the values you uphold. The aftermath was brutal. Alex was ousted, his reputation tarnished. Sterling Innovations was absorbed into Titan Dynamics, the name slowly fading into corporate history. He lost everything, his career, his status, and perhaps most importantly, my respect. But from the ashes of destruction, something new began to emerge. With the proceeds from the sale, I established a venture capital fund. Not for the Alex Sterlings of the world, the entitled and arrogant, but for the young, hungry, and humble founders with a vision and the drive to make it a reality. People who understood the value of hard work, collaboration, and respect. Ironic, isn't it? That my son's arrogance led me to create a platform for those who embody the very qualities he lacked. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about building a new legacy, one founded on merit, integrity, and a genuine desire to make a difference. Now, I spend my days mentoring these young entrepreneurs, guiding them, sharing my experiences, and helping them avoid the pitfalls that Alex so carelessly stumbled into. I see in them the passion and dedication that once drove me, the same fire that Alex allowed to extinguish. It's a different kind of satisfaction, a more profound sense of purpose. I'm no longer building a company, but building people. Investing not just in their ideas, but in their character. And in doing so, I'm finally creating the legacy I always envisioned, one that will endure long after the Sterling name has faded from the corporate landscape. Perhaps, one day, Alex will understand. Perhaps, one day, he will learn from his mistakes and find his own path to redemption. But until then, I will continue to invest in those who understand the true meaning of success, not just financial gain, but the positive impact you have on the world. So, what's the lesson here? Don't let arrogance blind you. Respect the wisdom of experience. And remember, true power lies not in titles or inheritance, but in the character you build and the legacy you leave behind. Are you building something to be proud of, or are you tearing down the foundations of your own success? Think about it. Because the choices you make today will define the legacy you leave tomorrow. And that, my friends, is a truth worth remembering. Because the choices you make today will define the legacy you leave tomorrow. And that, my friends, is a truth worth remembering. A truth I learned the hardest way possible, through the cold, harsh reality of family betrayal and corporate warfare. Let me tell you, seeing your own flesh and blood prioritize ego over everything you've built, it cuts deeper than any business deal gone sour. It's a pain that lingers, a constant reminder of misplaced trust. The anger, oh, the anger was a firestorm. A roaring inferno fueled by years of dedication, countless sacrifices, all seemingly dismissed with a flick of the wrist by my own son. But anger, raw and untamed, is a dangerous weapon. It clouds judgment, leading to rash decisions. That's where the irony comes in. The situation was dripping with it. I, the man who built Sterling Innovations from the ground up, was now being treated like a relic, an outdated piece of technology in my own company. My son, Alex, the very person I groomed to take over, saw me as an obstacle, a shadow he desperately wanted to escape. The irony? He was so blinded by his ambition that he couldn't see the cliff he was rapidly approaching. He thought he was innovating, disrupting, when in reality, he was dismantling everything I had carefully constructed. So, I embraced calculation. I channeled the anger into a meticulously crafted plan, a blueprint of justice, if you will. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about preserving the legacy I had envisioned, even if it meant tearing down the current structure to rebuild it anew. It was about teaching my son a lesson, a harsh one, about respect, humility, and the true meaning of leadership. My calm was deceptive. Beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. I knew what I had to do, and I would execute it with precision and unwavering resolve. The decision to sell my shares to Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Titan Dynamics, our fiercest competitor, wasn't made lightly. It was a calculated risk, a chess move designed to checkmate my son's reckless ambition. I knew it would send shockwaves through the market, that sterling innovations would suffer in the short term. But I also knew that it was the only way to save the company from Alex's self-destructive path. The frustration I felt was immense. Years of mentoring, of sharing my knowledge and experience, seemingly wasted. He had the potential, the raw talent, but his arrogance and disrespect for history blinded him. He was so focused on proving himself that he forgot the foundation upon which his success was built. The determination to rectify the situation, to protect the company I had poured my life into, fueled me forward. The trial that followed was severe. Watching my son's career crumble, seeing the sterling name tarnished, it was a heavy burden to bear. There were moments of doubt, fleeting glimpses of regret. But I knew, deep down, that I had done what was necessary. It was a painful lesson for everyone involved, but sometimes, the most valuable lessons are learned through adversity. And now, in my retirement, I've found a new purpose. I've established a venture capital fund, dedicated to supporting young, talented, but humble founders. I seek out individuals who possess not only the drive and ambition to succeed but also the wisdom to learn from their mistakes and the respect to value the contributions of others. I invest in character, in integrity, in the kind of leadership that builds sustainable success, not fleeting empires fueled by ego. Perhaps, in this way, I can cultivate a new legacy, one built on respect, not blood. A legacy that reflects the lessons I learned from the ashes of my past. And that, my friends, is a legacy worth fighting for. It's a legacy that reminds us that true power lies not in control, but in the ability to learn, to adapt, and to ultimately, forgive. And that, my friends, is a legacy worth fighting for. It's a legacy that reminds us that true power lies not in control, but in the ability to learn, to adapt, and to ultimately, forgive. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't erase the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being dismissed by your own flesh and blood. The anger, that white-hot rage that simmered just beneath the surface for months, years even, after Alex's actions, it's a constant companion. It was a cold fury, fueled by the deepest disappointment a parent can feel, the realization that the child you poured your heart and soul into could so casually disregard the foundation you built, the values you instilled. The irony, of course, wasn't lost on me. I, Richard Sterling, the supposed dinosaur, the relic of a bygone era, had orchestrated a financial maneuver so audacious, so ruthlessly efficient, that it left the boy wonder gasping for air. It was a calculated risk, a high-stakes gamble, but one I knew I had to take. My company, Sterling Innovations, was more than just a business, it was my life's work, my legacy. And I wasn't about to stand by and watch my son, blinded by ambition and arrogance, steer it off a cliff. The calm I projected, the almost serene detachment I displayed during and after the hostile takeover, was a carefully constructed facade. Beneath the surface, a maelstrom of emotions raged. There was the pain of familial fracture, the grief of losing the son I thought I knew. But there was also a grim satisfaction, a sense of justice served. He thought he could play me, that I was too old, too out of touch. He underestimated the enduring power of experience, the sharp edge of a mind honed by decades of navigating the treacherous waters of the tech industry. The frustration, the sheer, unadulterated frustration of watching Alex squander opportunities, dismiss sound advice, and surround himself with sycophants, had been building for years. Each ill-advised decision, each arrogant dismissal, chipped away at my patience, eroded my hope. I tried to guide him, to mentor him, but he was too consumed by his own self-importance to listen. He saw my concern as interference, my wisdom as outdated. He wanted to prove himself, to escape my shadow, but he did so by dismantling everything I had painstakingly built. The trial, the silent, internal trial I conducted in the months leading up to the sale, was agonizing. I weighed the potential consequences, the damage it would inflict on my family, on the company, on my own reputation. But ultimately, I concluded that inaction was a far greater risk. To stand by and watch Alex destroy everything I had worked for would have been a betrayal of my own principles, a disservice to the employees who had dedicated their lives to sterling innovations. The severity of my actions, the cold, calculated ruthlessness of selling my shares to Titan Dynamics, was not something I took lightly. It was a last resort, a desperate measure taken to protect what I believed was worth saving. Some might call it vindictive, even cruel. But I saw it as a necessary act, a painful but ultimately corrective measure. Tolerance, I learned, has its limits. Reconciliation, while always desirable, isn't always possible. Sometimes, the only way to truly teach a lesson is to let someone experience the consequences of their actions, no matter how harsh those consequences may be. And perhaps, in the end, that was the greatest gift I could give my son, the opportunity to learn from his mistakes, to rebuild himself, and to forge his own path, even if that path was paved with the ashes of his former life. The venture capital fund became my new focus, a way to channel my experience and resources into supporting young entrepreneurs, individuals who possessed the drive and ambition of my younger self, but also the humility and respect that Alex lacked. It was a chance to build something new, something positive, something that would leave a lasting legacy, not of control and dominance, but of mentorship and empowerment. And that, ultimately, is a far more satisfying reward. Now, if you're facing a similar situation, ask yourself, what legacy do you want to leave behind? What values are you willing to fight for? And are you prepared to make the tough decisions, even if they come at a personal cost? Okay, let's continue the story. What values are you willing to fight for? And are you prepared to make the tough decisions, even if they come at a personal cost? That's what I had to ask myself. It wasn't just about the money, though let's be clear, the money was substantial. It was about respect, about legacy, about the very soul of what I had built. I watched Alex, my son, the CEO I had personally groomed, systematically dismantle everything I believed in. He chased fleeting trends, ignored the wisdom of experience, and worst of all, treated the people who had poured their lives into sterling innovations with disdain. He thought he was modernizing, innovating, but all I saw was reckless arrogance. And then came the shareholder meeting, the public humiliation. That wasn't just a son disagreeing with his father, it was a calculated act of defiance, a declaration of war. The irony wasn't lost on me. He wanted to step out of my shadow. He would soon find himself in a darkness he couldn't comprehend. Selling my shares to Marcus Thorne, the shark at Titan Dynamics, wasn't an easy decision. It felt like amputating a limb, a vital part of myself. But sometimes, you have to sacrifice a part to save the whole, or in this case, to teach a painful lesson. People called it revenge. Maybe it was, in a way. But it was also a necessary correction. Alex needed to understand that power isn't a birthright, it's earned, and it comes with responsibility. He needed to learn that disrespect has consequences, and that burning bridges can leave you stranded. The look on his face when he realized what I had done, when Marcus Thorne walked into that emergency board meeting, that image is etched in my memory. Panic, disbelief, and finally, a dawning realization of the magnitude of his mistake. Some might say I was too harsh. A father shouldn't do that to his son. But what kind of father would I be if I allowed him to continue down a path of self-destruction, fueled by ego and ignorance? Sometimes, love requires tough medicine, even if it tastes bitter. And let's be honest, there was a certain satisfaction in the execution. The calm calculation, the precise timing, the swift and decisive move that sent shockwaves through the industry. It was like a chess game, years in the making, and I had just delivered the checkmate. The aftermath was chaotic. The stock plummeted, careers were ruined, and Sterling Innovations, as I knew it, ceased to exist. Alex was fired, publicly shamed. He called, of course, desperate, pleading. But I remained firm. You wanted to run your company your way, without my interference, I told him. Now you have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. It wasn't easy to say those words. There was a profound sadness, a deep disappointment. But there was also a sense of liberation. I had done what I believed was necessary, even if it was painful. And now, I was free to start anew, to build something different, something better. Now, with the proceeds, I fund young entrepreneurs, the ones who are hungry, talented, and above all, humble. They understand the value of hard work, the importance of respect, and the fragility of success. I guide them, mentor them, and help them avoid the mistakes that Alex made. It's a new legacy, one built not on blood, but on shared values and a commitment to excellence. So, what's the point of this story? It's not just about a father and son, a corporate power struggle, or a dramatic act of revenge. It's about the choices we make, the values we uphold, and the legacy we leave behind. It's about understanding that true power lies not in arrogance, but in wisdom, humility, and respect. And it's about being willing to make the tough decisions, even when they break your heart, to protect what you believe in. Ask yourself, what are you willing to fight for? And what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Because ultimately, that's what truly matters. And what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Because ultimately, that's what truly matters. It's a question that haunted me after the dust settled, after Alex was gone, after Sterling Innovations was just a footnote in the history books. I had power, I had wealth, I had the satisfaction of seeing my son brought down a peg or two. But at what cost? Was this really the legacy I wanted? A legacy of vengeance, of a father betraying his son, of a titan crumbling under the weight of personal animosity? The irony wasn't lost on me. I, the man who built Sterling Innovations from the ground up, had become its destroyer. All because of a bruised ego, a son's arrogance, and my own simmering resentment. There was a chilling calculation in my actions, a cold precision that even surprised me. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision fueled by rage, though the anger was certainly there. It was a carefully constructed plan, a blueprint of justice, or perhaps more accurately, a blueprint of revenge. I knew exactly what buttons to push, which levers to pull. Marcus Thorne, my company's nemesis, had been sniffing around for years, eager to swallow Sterling Innovations whole. He'd made overtures, offers that I always politely declined. Until that day. That day in the boardroom, when Alex, my own flesh and blood, dismissed me as irrelevant. That day, the sleeping giant awoke. The calm I projected during that meeting was a facade, a mask I'd perfected over decades of high-stakes negotiations. Inside, a storm was brewing, a tempest of hurt and anger. But I wouldn't give Alex the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I wouldn't let him see the pain he inflicted. Instead, I channeled that pain into a laser-like focus, a determination to make him pay for his disrespect, for his arrogance, for his utter disregard for the years of sacrifice I had poured into building Sterling Innovations. The frustration was immense. To see my life's work, my creation, being steered towards potential ruin by a reckless young man who thought he knew better, was unbearable. I had tolerated his missteps, his impulsive decisions, his constant need to prove himself. I'd chalked it up to youthful exuberance, to the inevitable growing pains of a new CEO. But the public humiliation, the casual dismissal in front of shareholders, that was the last straw. It was a slap in the face, a betrayal of the trust one had placed in him. The trial was severe, not just for Alex, but for me as well. Watching my son's world crumble, seeing the sterling name tarnished, it was a heavy burden to bear. There were moments of doubt, flashes of regret. Was I being too harsh? Was there another way? Could we have salvaged our relationship, salvaged the company, without resorting to such drastic measures? But then I would remember the look on Alex's face, the condescending tone in his voice, and the resolve would harden once again. Tolerance, it seemed, had its limits. I had tolerated Alex's arrogance for too long, hoping he would eventually mature, that he would learn to value experience and wisdom. But he never did. He remained consumed by his own ambition, blind to the sacrifices that had paved his way. And so, I acted. I unleashed the consequences of his actions, the ramifications of his disrespect. Reconciliation? Perhaps someday. But not yet. The wounds are still too fresh, the scars too deep. Maybe, in time, Alex will understand the lessons he needed to learn, the importance of humility, the value of respect. Maybe, in time, he will see that my actions, however harsh, were ultimately motivated by a desire to protect the legacy of sterling innovations, even if it meant destroying it in the process. But for now, I find solace in my new venture, in supporting young entrepreneurs who possess not just talent, but also integrity and a willingness to learn. I am building a new legacy, one based on mentorship, on guidance, on fostering the next generation of innovators. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. That will be the kind of legacy I can be proud of. That's the only thing that matters. That will be the kind of legacy I can be proud of. That's the only thing that matters. And believe me, it wasn't easy getting there. Seeing Sterling Innovations, the company I bled for, the company I envisioned from the ground up, slowly being dismantled, it was a different kind of pain. A pain that cut deeper than any boardroom battle, any market crash. It was the pain of seeing your life's work, your very identity, being erased. But anger, raw and burning, fueled me. Alex, my own son, blinded by ambition, had forgotten the fundamental principles upon which Sterling Innovations was built: respect, collaboration, and a relentless pursuit of innovation, not ego. His arrogance had poisoned the well, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the only way to save the company from his hubris was to dismantle it myself. Irony, wasn't it? The founder, the builder, becoming the destroyer. The decision to sell to Titan Dynamics wasn't made lightly. It was a calculated move, a surgical strike aimed at the heart of Alex's reign. I knew Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Titan, was a shark, a ruthless competitor. But I also knew he respected strength, and he respected the legacy of Sterling Innovations, even if he wanted to absorb it into his own empire. In my mind, it was a choice between a slow, agonizing death under Alex's mismanagement or a swift, albeit painful, acquisition that might salvage some of the company's innovation and talent. The aftermath was brutal. The market reacted predictably, the stock price tanking as panic set in. I watched it all unfold with a detached calm, the eye of the storm. Alex's frantic phone call, his voice cracking with disbelief and betrayal, was almost satisfying. Almost. But even in that moment, I felt a pang of sadness, a father's sorrow for a son who had lost his way. His words, "Why? Why did you do that?" echoed in my ears, a constant reminder of the chasm that had grown between us. My reply, delivered with a deliberate calmness that belied the turmoil within, was simple: I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. It was harsh, yes, but necessary. He needed to understand the consequences of his actions, the price of disrespect. The following months were a whirlwind of mergers, restructuring, and layoffs. The Sterling name, once synonymous with innovation and leadership, began to fade from the tech landscape. It was a difficult pill to swallow, seeing the company I had built being reshaped into something new, something different. But I knew, deep down, that it was the only way. And then, there was Alex. The firing, the disgrace, the loss of reputation, it was a devastating fall from grace. He had everything handed to him on a silver platter, and he squandered it all with his arrogance. He had to learn the hard way that success isn't a birthright, it's earned through hard work, humility, and respect for those who came before you. But even in his downfall, I couldn't abandon him completely. I offered him a lifeline, a chance to rebuild his life, to learn from his mistakes. He refused, of course, his pride still too wounded to accept help from the father he had so publicly rejected. Maybe someday he'll come around. Maybe someday he'll understand. Now, I focus on the future, on building something new, something meaningful. The venture capital fund is my redemption, my chance to nurture young talent, to guide the next generation of innovators. I see in them the spark of creativity, the drive to succeed, but also the humility to learn and the respect for experience. I invest not just in their ideas, but in their character. Because ultimately, that's what matters most. That's the legacy I want to leave behind, not just a successful company, but a world filled with leaders who are both brilliant and kind, ambitious and humble. It's a long road, but I'm determined to make it happen. Join me, won't you? Let's build a better future, together. Join me, won't you? Let's build a better future, together. But first, let me tell you how I almost destroyed one. The irony isn't lost on me. Richard Sterling, the titan of tech, brought low by his own flesh and blood. It's a Shakespearean tragedy, isn't it? Or maybe a Greek one. Hubris, betrayal, and a healthy dose of cold, hard cash. You see, Sterling Innovations was my life's work. I poured my heart, soul, and every waking moment into building that company from the ground up. I knew every line of code, every customer, every potential pitfall. It was my baby. And like any parent, I wanted to see it thrive, even after I was gone. That's why I handed the reins over to Alex, my son. He was bright, ambitious, and had a fresh perspective. He was supposed to carry on my legacy, take Sterling Innovations to new heights. Foolish, wasn't I? I blinded myself with paternal pride, ignored the warning signs, the growing arrogance, the blatant disregard for experience. He saw my presence as a threat, a constant reminder that he was living in my shadow. He wanted to prove himself, to show the world that he was his own man. And how did he choose to do that? By dismissing my advice, alienating my loyal employees, and gambling with the company's future on a reckless merger. The shareholder meeting was the final straw. The humiliation was public, deliberate. He didn't just disagree with me, he belittled me, treated me like some doddering old fool who was out of touch. Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Sterling, but we should listen to people who are still present in the 21st century. The words stung, not just because they were disrespectful, but because they were uttered by my own son, the one I had trusted to protect my creation. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The father disappeared, and the ruthless businessman emerged. It wasn't anger I felt, not entirely. There was pain, yes, a deep, aching disappointment. But more than that, there was a cold, calculating resolve. He wanted to play the game his way. Fine. I would show him how the game was really played. I had spent decades building relationships, understanding the market, anticipating the moves of my competitors. I knew exactly who would be interested in acquiring a controlling stake in Sterling Innovations, and I knew exactly how to make it happen. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Titan Dynamics, was a shark. He had been circling Sterling Innovations for years, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He had made me an offer in the past, one I had politely declined. But now, the situation was different. My son had handed him the perfect opening. One phone call was all it took. "Marcus," I said, "is your offer still standing?" The next morning, the world watched as the news broke. Richard Sterling had sold his entire 45% stake to Titan Dynamics. The market panicked. Sterling Innovations stock plummeted. Alex was summoned to an emergency board meeting, only to find Marcus Thorne sitting in my chair, announcing a hostile takeover. The vote of no confidence was swift and decisive. Alex was out. He called me, of course, his voice trembling with rage and disbelief. Why? Why did you do that? I was on the golf course, enjoying the sunshine and the sweet taste of revenge. I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference, I said calmly. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. It was brutal, I know. Some might say I went too far. But I saw no other way. Alex had to learn a lesson, a harsh lesson about respect, humility, and the consequences of arrogance. He lost everything, his career, his reputation, his inheritance. Sterling Innovations was swallowed up by Titan Dynamics, its identity slowly erased. But from the ashes of that destruction, something new emerged. I used the proceeds from the sale to establish a venture capital fund, dedicated to supporting young, talented, but humble founders. I wanted to cultivate a new generation of leaders, ones who valued experience, respected their elders, and understood the importance of building a legacy based on collaboration, not ego. Perhaps, in the end, that was the real victory. I may have lost my company, but I gained something far more valuable, the opportunity to shape the future, to create a world where talent is nurtured, not stifled, and where respect is earned, not demanded. And who knows, maybe one day, Alex will understand. Maybe one day, he will even forgive me. But until then, I will continue to build, to create, and to invest in the next generation of innovators. Join me, won't you? Let's build something truly lasting, together. Join me, won't you? Let's build something truly lasting, together. But lasting isn't always about brick and mortar, or even code and algorithms. Sometimes, it's about legacy, about the values you instill, the principles you uphold. And sometimes, it's about knowing when to walk away, even when it breaks your heart, because the thing you built has become something unrecognizable, something corrupted. My story, the one I'm sharing with you today, is a testament to that. It's a story of a father, a son, and a company that became the battleground for their fractured relationship. Sterling Innovations, my life's work, was meant to be my legacy, a beacon of innovation and integrity. I poured my heart and soul into it, nurturing it from a fledgling startup to a tech giant. And then, I entrusted it to my son, Alex. I wanted him to carry the torch, to build upon the foundation I had laid. I saw potential in him, a spark of brilliance that reminded me of my younger self. But somewhere along the line, that spark was extinguished, replaced by an ambition that bordered on arrogance, a hunger for recognition that blinded him to the wisdom of experience. The boardroom became our arena, a place where his youthful exuberance clashed with my seasoned pragmatism. He dismissed my suggestions, disregarded my warnings, and surrounded himself with yes-men who fueled his ego. Each rejection, each dismissal, chipped away at my hope, leaving me feeling like an outsider in the company I had created. The shareholder meeting was the culmination, the final straw. As I raised concerns about a reckless merger, Alex silenced me with a wave of his hand, his words laced with condescension. "Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Sterling, but we should listen to people who are still present in the 21st century." The humiliation stung, not just as a businessman, but as a father. It was a public declaration of his disregard, a blatant attempt to erase my influence, to rewrite history. That night, anger burned within me, a cold, calculated fury. But beneath the anger, there was also a profound sadness, a deep sense of disappointment. I had failed. I had failed to instill in my son the values that I held dear. I had failed to prepare him for the responsibility that came with leadership. But I am not one to wallow. I am a builder, a strategist, a survivor. And so, I began to formulate a plan that would be swift, decisive, and utterly devastating. It was a plan born not of malice, but of a desperate need to protect the legacy of Sterling Innovations, even if it meant dismantling it in the process. My 45% stake, my controlling share, was my weapon. And I knew exactly who to wield it against. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Titan Dynamics, our fiercest competitor, had made overtures in the past, expressing interest in acquiring Sterling Innovations. I had always dismissed him, but now, he was my only option. The call was brief, professional, and devoid of emotion. "Marcus," I said, "is your offer still standing?" His reply was immediate and enthusiastic. The deal was struck within hours, a silent agreement that would reshape the landscape of the tech industry. The next morning, the news broke. The market reacted predictably, with shock and panic. Sterling Innovations stock plummeted, and Alex's world began to crumble around him. The emergency board meeting was a formality, a stage for Marcus Thorne to assert his dominance. I watched from afar, a detached observer, as my son was ousted, stripped of his title and his power. The pain was there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a sense of grim satisfaction. I had done what I had to do. When Alex finally called, his voice filled with desperation, I answered calmly, I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. It was a harsh statement, perhaps even cruel, but it was the truth. He needed to understand the consequences of his actions, the price of his arrogance. Sterling Innovations was eventually merged and restructured, its identity slowly fading into the background. Alex lost everything, his career, his reputation, and his respect. But from the ashes of his failure, I found a new purpose. Using the proceeds from the sale, I established a venture capital fund dedicated to supporting young, talented, and, most importantly, humble entrepreneurs. I wanted to cultivate a new generation of leaders, individuals who valued integrity, collaboration, and respect. My legacy may not be the company I built, but it will be the impact I have on the lives of others, the values I instill in the next generation. And perhaps, one day, Alex will understand the lesson I tried to teach him, the importance of humility and the enduring power of respect. So, what's the takeaway? It's this: build something meaningful, yes, but build it on a foundation of strong values. Nurture those values, protect them, and be prepared to defend them, even if it means sacrificing what you've created. Because in the end, it's not the buildings or the companies that matter, it's the people you touch, the lives you inspire, and the legacy you leave behind. Think about what kind of legacy you want to leave and start building it today. And that's it, right? The end of the story. But it's not really. Because in the end, it's not the buildings or the companies that matter, it's the people you touch, the lives you inspire, and the legacy you leave behind. Think about what kind of legacy you want to leave and start building it today. I thought I was building one with Alex, a sterling legacy. Pain, that's what I feel now, a dull ache that settles deep in your bones, the kind that reminds you of every wrong turn, every misplaced trust. I gave him everything. The company, the opportunity, my name. And he threw it back in my face, like it was worthless. The anger, though, that's a different beast. It simmers, a slow burn that could erupt at any moment. It's the anger of a father betrayed, of a founder scorned, of a man who dedicated his life to something, only to see it desecrated by his own flesh and blood. Ironic, isn't it? The man I groomed to carry on my vision became the very reason that vision crumbled. Ironic that my own son, the CEO I appointed, forced me to become his adversary. But beneath the pain and the anger, there was a calculation, cold and precise. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about business. Alex was jeopardizing everything I had built. His arrogance was a cancer, slowly eating away at the core of Sterling Innovations. He needed to be stopped, and I was the only one who could do it. Selling my shares to Titan Dynamics wasn't an act of revenge, it was a strategic maneuver, a necessary evil. It was a power play, plain and simple. I had to regain control, even if it meant destroying what I had created. The calm that followed was unsettling, a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. It was the calm of a man who had made a difficult decision and was now prepared to face the consequences. I knew what I was doing was going to devastate Alex, but I also knew it was the only way to save the company, or what was left of it, from his reckless ambition. It was a trial, a severe test of my own principles. Could I sacrifice my son for the sake of my creation? The answer, as brutal as it was yes. Frustration, however, lingered. The frustration of watching someone you love stumble, of knowing they're making mistakes but being powerless to stop them. I tried to guide him, to offer advice, but he wouldn't listen. He was too blinded by his own ego to see the danger he was in. That frustration fueled my determination. I had to act, not out of spite, but out of a desperate desire to salvage something from the wreckage. And yet, even now, there's a sliver of hope, a flicker of tolerance that refuses to be extinguished. Perhaps, in time, Alex will understand. Perhaps he will learn from his mistakes and emerge a better man. Perhaps, one day, we can reconcile. But that's a long way off. For now, I focus on my new venture, on supporting young entrepreneurs who understand the value of hard work, humility, and respect. I often think about the conversation I had with Alex after the deal went through. His voice, filled with panic and betrayal, asking, "Why, Dad? Why did you do this?" My answer, delivered with a calm that belied the turmoil within, was simple: I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. Harsh? Perhaps. But necessary. Sometimes, the greatest lessons are learned through the harshest of realities. Now, I channel my energy into fostering a new generation of leaders, individuals who value collaboration, integrity, and long-term vision. My venture capital fund isn't just about making money, it's about building something meaningful, something that will last. It's about creating a legacy of innovation and social impact, a legacy that I can be proud of. It's about finding those diamonds in the rough, the ones who are hungry, humble, and driven by a purpose greater than themselves. So, what's the takeaway? It's this: don't let ego cloud your judgment. Respect the wisdom of experience. And always, always, remember that true success isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the impact you have on the world. Don't let your ambition blind you to the values that truly matter. Because in the end, it's not about what you achieve, but how you achieve it. It's about the people you lift up along the way, the lives you touch, and the legacy you leave behind. What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of world do you want to create? The choice is yours. Alright, so where were we? Ah yes, the kind of world you want to create. The choice is yours. And mine. See, I built sterling innovations from the ground up. Blood, sweat, and more sleepless nights than I care to remember. It was my vision, my legacy. Then came Alex, my son. I wanted him to have it all, to carry the torch. I groomed him, mentored him, and eventually, made him CEO. Big mistake. The arrogance started subtly. Dismissing my suggestions in meetings, sidelining loyal employees who'd been with me since the beginning. Little jabs, designed to assert his dominance, to prove he was his own man. I tolerated it, at first. Chalked it up to youthful exuberance, the need to prove himself. But then it escalated. Risky ventures, ignoring board advice, and that damned merger he was so fixated on. I saw the disaster brewing, the potential for ruin. I tried to reason with him, to guide him. But he wouldn't listen. He was too blinded by his own ambition, too convinced of his own infallibility. The shareholder meeting, that was the last straw. The public humiliation. He waved me off, in front of everyone, like I was some senile old fool. Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Sterling, but we should listen to people who are still present in the 21st century. The word stung. Not just because they were disrespectful, but because they were delivered with such condescending arrogance. It was a deliberate act of defiance, a clear message that I was no longer relevant, no longer in control. The pain was sharp, a betrayal from the one person I trusted most. But beneath the pain, something else stirred, a cold, calculating anger. That's when the plan began to form. A plan born not of malice, but of a desperate need to protect what I had built, to salvage my legacy from the hands of a reckless fool. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about justice, about ensuring the survival of Sterling Innovations, even if it meant sacrificing my own son's career. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had given him everything, and now, I was about to take it all away. The call to Marcus Thorne was swift, decisive. Is your offer still standing? I asked, my voice calm, betraying none of the turmoil within. Marcus, ever the opportunist, didn't hesitate. It is, Richard. More so than ever. He knew the potential, the advantage of acquiring my stake. He knew the chaos it would unleash. And he was eager to capitalize. The announcement the next morning sent shockwaves through the market. Sterling Innovations stock plummeted. Alex was blindsided, reeling from the blow. He stormed into the emergency board meeting, expecting to find his father, his ally. Instead, he found Marcus Thorne, the victor, the new puppet master. The vote of no confidence was a formality. Alex was out, disgraced, his career in ruins. His frantic phone call from the parking lot. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Why? Why did you do that? He pleaded, his voice choked with panic and disbelief. I was on the golf course, the sun warm on my face, the tension finally easing from my shoulders. I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference, I replied, my voice calm and steady. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss. The aftermath was messy, brutal. Sterling Innovations was swallowed up by Titan Dynamics, restructured, and slowly, the Sterling name faded into obscurity. Alex lost everything, his career, his reputation, and his respect. But I gained something too, freedom. The freedom to finally cultivate a new legacy, one built on respect, not blood. The venture capital fund I established is a testament to that. It funds young, talented, humble founders, the kind who understand the value of experience, the importance of listening, the power of collaboration. So, what kind of world do I want to create now? A world where ambition is tempered by humility, where innovation is guided by wisdom, and where respect is earned, not inherited. A world where the lessons of the past are not forgotten, but embraced, and where the mistakes of one generation are not repeated by the next. That's the world I'm building, one investment at a time. What about you? What kind of world are you building? And more importantly, how are you treating the people around you on your way to the top? Think about it. Because your choices, just like mine, will define your legacy. Think about it. Because your choices, just like mine, will define your legacy. My story isn't just about revenge, it's a cautionary tale about pride, respect, and the devastating consequences of forgetting where you came from. It's about the bitter irony of building something great, only to watch it crumble because of the very person you hoped would carry the torch. And it's about the cold, calculated power of knowing your worth, even when those closest to you try to diminish it. The pain of Alex's betrayal cut deep, a wound inflicted by my own flesh and blood, the son I had poured my life into. The anger simmered, a slow burn fueled by the public humiliation and the blatant disregard for my experience, my wisdom, and my legacy. He saw me as an obstacle, a relic of the past, rather than the foundation upon which his success was built. But beneath the pain and anger, a plan began to form, a blueprint for justice, or perhaps, revenge. It wasn't about destroying Alex, it was about teaching him a lesson, a harsh lesson about the importance of humility and respect. It was about reclaiming the power that he so carelessly dismissed. The frustration I felt was immense, a stifling weight that threatened to suffocate me. But with frustration came determination, a steely resolve to right the wrong, to show him the true cost of his arrogance. My years in the business world had taught me one thing: power resides where money flows. And I controlled the flow. Selling my shares to Titan Dynamics wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was the culmination of months of disrespect, of ignored warnings, of a growing realization that Alex was not the leader I had hoped he would be. The call to Marcus Thorne was calm, almost detached, but beneath the surface lay years of pent-up resentment and a burning desire to see justice served. "Is your offer still standing?" The words were simple, but they carried the weight of my entire legacy. The fallout was swift and brutal. Watching Sterling Innovations stock plummet was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that I was contributing to the destruction of something I had built from the ground up. But it was a necessary sacrifice, a painful amputation to save the company from Alex's reckless leadership. The emergency board meeting, the vote of no confidence, the look of stunned disbelief on Alex's face, these were all moments etched in my memory, a testament to the power of a well-executed plan. His panicked phone call from the conference room, his voice filled with desperation, brought a fleeting moment of satisfaction, quickly followed by a wave of profound sadness. "Why? Why did you do that?" My response was measured, devoid of emotion. "I wanted to run my company my way, without my interference. Now I have. It is no longer my company. Good luck with your new boss." The words were harsh, but they were the truth. I had given him the opportunity to lead, and he had squandered it. The consequences were devastating for Alex. He lost everything: his job, his reputation, his respect. He became a cautionary tale himself, a symbol of arrogance and the perils of forgetting your roots. But in his downfall, I found a strange sense of liberation. I was free from the burden of his expectations, free to pursue a new legacy, one built on respect, not blood. Now, in my retirement, I focus on nurturing young, talented, and, most importantly, humble entrepreneurs. I invest in their dreams, mentor them, and guide them, always emphasizing the importance of respecting those who came before them. I try to instill in them the values that Alex so carelessly discarded. Perhaps, in some small way, I can atone for the mistakes I made with my own son, by helping others avoid the same pitfalls. Tolerance and reconciliation are not always easy, but they are essential for building a lasting legacy. My story is a testament to the fact that even in the face of betrayal and disappointment, it is possible to find redemption and build something new, something meaningful. It's a reminder that true power lies not in arrogance, but in humility, respect, and a willingness to learn from the past. What will your legacy be? It's a reminder that true power lies not in arrogance, but in humility, respect, and a willingness to learn from the past. What will your legacy be? That's the question that haunted me as I watched my son, Alex, the CEO I appointed, dismiss my concerns during that shareholder meeting. The pain was sharp, a father's disappointment mixed with the sting of public humiliation. It wasn't just about the money, though a lifetime of work had gone into Sterling Innovations. It was about legacy, about the values I thought I had instilled in him, about the future I envisioned for the company, a future he was jeopardizing with his reckless ambition. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built Sterling Innovations from the ground up, pouring my heart and soul into it. I groomed Alex, gave him every opportunity, and ultimately handed him the reins, believing he would carry the torch. But somewhere along the way, he became blinded by his own perceived brilliance, convinced that he knew better than the man who had paved the way for him. The anger simmered beneath the surface, fueled by a sense of betrayal. How could he, my own son, treat me with such blatant disrespect, especially in front of investors who had trusted me for decades? The decision to sell my shares to Titan Dynamics wasn't made in haste. It was a calculated move, a strategic maneuver born out of frustration and a deep-seated need to protect the company I had created. It was a harsh lesson, perhaps, but one I felt was necessary. Alex needed to understand that success isn't a birthright, that respect is earned, and that arrogance can lead to catastrophic consequences. The calmness I projected masked the turmoil within. It was a power play, yes, but also an act of tough love, a desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The stock plummeted, Alex was ousted, and Sterling Innovations was absorbed by Titan Dynamics. It was a devastating blow, not just for Alex, but for everyone who had worked tirelessly to build the company. Yet, amidst the chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. The frustration that had been building for years finally dissipated, replaced by a quiet determination to start anew, to build a different kind of legacy. The trial was severe, no doubt. Watching my son's career crumble was agonizing. Knowing that my actions had contributed to his downfall weighed heavily on me. But I also knew that I had to make a choice between enabling his destructive behavior and taking decisive action to prevent further damage. It was a painful decision, one that I wrestled with for weeks, but ultimately, I believed it was the right one. Now, years later, I find myself in a different place, both physically and emotionally. The anger has subsided, replaced by a sense of tolerance and a glimmer of hope for reconciliation. I understand that Alex's actions were driven by a complex mix of ambition, insecurity, and a desperate need to prove himself. While I don't condone his behavior, I can at least understand it. The venture capital fund I established is my way of giving back, of nurturing young talent without the pitfalls of ego and arrogance. I invest in founders who are not only brilliant but also humble, who understand the value of collaboration and respect. It's about fostering a culture of innovation built on a foundation of integrity. It's about creating a legacy that I can be proud of, one that reflects the values I hold dear. Perhaps, one day, Alex and I will find a way to bridge the gap that has formed between us. Perhaps, he will learn from his mistakes and emerge stronger and wiser. Until then, I will continue to build my new legacy, one built on respect, not blood, one built on humility, not arrogance. What will your legacy be? Will it be one of pride and accomplishment, or one of regret and disillusionment? The choice, ultimately, is yours. Think carefully, act wisely, and never underestimate the power of respect. So, the choice, ultimately, is yours. Think carefully, act wisely, and never underestimate the power of respect. That's where we left off, wasn't it? But the story doesn't end there, does it? The dust settles, the wreckage is cleared, and we're left to pick up the pieces and understand what truly happened. It's easy to paint this as a simple tale of revenge, a father striking back at a son who disrespected him. But it's so much more complex than that, isn't it? It's about legacy, about control, about the corrosive nature of arrogance and the quiet strength of someone who has been underestimated for far too long. Consider Alex. He wanted to escape his father's shadow, a perfectly understandable desire. Many children of successful people struggle with this. But his methods were flawed from the start. He confused innovation with recklessness, confidence with hubris. He believed that because he was a Sterling, he was untouchable. That's a dangerous assumption, and one that ultimately cost him everything. He forgot that respect isn't a birthright, it's earned. He dismissed the wisdom of experience, the value of history, the loyalty of those who had built the company alongside his father. And in doing so, he sealed his own fate. Richard, on the other hand, might seem like the victor. He orchestrated a masterful, if ruthless, coup. He regained control, albeit indirectly, and saw his son humbled. But victory always comes at a price, doesn't it? The pain of seeing his son fail, the destruction of the company he built, the tarnishing of the Sterling name, these are not things that can be easily dismissed. He achieved his goal, but at what cost to his own soul? Was it worth it? That's a question only he can answer. The creation of the venture capital fund, though, that's where we see a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption. Richard, having witnessed the destructive power of arrogance and the importance of respect, decided to invest in young, talented, but humble founders. He chose to support those who understood the value of hard work, collaboration, and ethical leadership. He decided to build a new legacy, one based on principles, not blood. It's a beautiful irony, isn't it? The man who seemingly destroyed his own family's legacy ended up creating a new one that might ultimately be more meaningful and enduring. So, what's the takeaway here? What's the lesson we can all learn from this dramatic saga? It's not simply about fathers and sons, CEOs and shareholders. It's about the choices we make, the values we uphold, and the consequences that follow. It's about understanding that true power doesn't come from a title or a surname, but from respect, integrity, and the ability to learn from our mistakes. It's about recognizing that legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you build, one decision at a time. And now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this story? Do you think Richard was justified in his actions? Could Alex have done anything differently? Have you ever experienced a similar situation in your own life, either personally or professionally? Share your comments below. Let's start a conversation. Let's learn from each other. And most importantly, let's remember the power of respect. Because in the end, that's all that truly matters. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of power, betrayal, and redemption. And until next time, remember to build your own legacy, one that you can be proud of.